I want to talk to everybody about my Graviflyer today. Now, last time we talked about this thing, I was having trouble with the frequency in it, and I fixed that issue. As many of you saw, I went ahead and took the DC flyback, and I took the Tesla coil, and I was able to merge the Tesla coil and the DC flyback's frequency together. So now that they operate together, and that was just based on a little bar that was on the bottom there, and I allowed the Tesla coil to put out basically a field that went out, and in that field it was able to take the high voltage and it was able to change it itself and put the frequency of the Tesla coil into it. Now, instead of on my oscilloscope getting 3 different readings of it, now I just get one. Okay, pretty simple. It was easy to change the frequency in that, and I did it by leeching the frequency from the Tesla coil itself, because it became the dominant thing in the system, and instead of the high voltage being separate. So that was pretty easy to do. The other part that came about in this is the motor speed. Now, if you put the negative on that little bar, right, and just imagine this Tesla coil, it's basically an antenna at that point. It's putting out the field as an antenna would. So if you put the negatives on there from your 2 motors, does it do anything? And the answer is no. You got to think about it in a different way. If you want to affect the motors and you're going to do it with a little bit of frequency, it basically a little bit of energy to put in both, right? You have to put the positives into it. So that's what I did. I said, okay, let's take this thing off. I took the negatives off, rehooked them back together, cleaned it up, put the positives on there. What happened? Well, my motor speed started to change. Now, it's a little hard to describe. Now, the top runs a little faster than the bottom. The bottom always has to catch up because the magnets are on it, creating centrifugal force, and that itself slows it down, right? But now, I gave it a little boost of energy. It was able to pick up extra energy from that Tesla coil to give my bottom disc the availability to bring up the amount of RPMs, right? So now I have both of them in sequence. It's regulating the amount of energy that goes into them. There's only a max that the motor's going to go. Maybe it's just a hair more based on the amount of energy going into it. But by putting the Tesla coil in there, it was allowing the two to balance. Now, this concept is like taking a clock and you want to put it next to another clock, and you got like a Graviflyer clock that has a swinging pendulum, right? You put another one next to it, and they may be out of sync at first, but after a while they start to sync together. Well, this is the exact same process that went on with the motors. You see, we were able to take the energy there, give it a little bit of boost on the bottom, and now they started to get in sync together. What was going on? Well, the Tesla coil and the high voltage created resonance in one system, right? Back and forth, the resonance. Well, the motors themselves started to create a second resonance, back and forth, right? So now I got 2 different frequencies of resonance. You see, the motors picked up the power, then the high voltage picked up the power and the frequency. Now I have 2 different resonance systems in my system. Now I have everything worked out. What does it create? Well, it creates a beat frequency between the 2. So why is that so significant? Well, let's just look back on history a little bit. We know that the Viamana had tubes, right? The most common picture you see is you have 2 sets of tubes, and then over here you have another set of tubes, right? But you have one higher and one shorter, right? So there's 2 over here at this height, there's 2 over here at this height. What does that do when it comes to tubes? Well, it creates 2 different distinct resonant frequencies in each one. Again, the resonance comes because you have 2 working back and forth together, and then 2 over here working back and forth together. Now you have 2 sets of frequencies that are in resonance with each other, but not in resonance with all 4. So you get a beat frequency that develops in between them. If you can understand that from a Viamana, you understand why it's an important breakthrough in the Graviflyer itself. Now we start to understand we have the elements that they're telling us in history that work. Is it right? Is it wrong? You know, we'll never know until it lifts. But it seems like a good direction to be in, right? I'd rather be on the side of history and what they're telling us works than to have, you know, nothing. With that said, I've been working on the piezo, and this is probably one of the most frustrating things in the world. It blew out my hearing aid twice. So just understand this. There's definitely ultrasonic frequencies that are going on in it. And you go, well, the piezo is not designed to put out anything more, you know, than something in the kilohertz range. What's the process going on that's making it go higher? See, this is the baffling thing to most people because they don't understand this. When I'm telling you it's forming a bubble, I'm not lying to you. It's absolutely doing it. And it's hilarious that people don't get the concept. And it's not something we haven't used before. We use magnetism to hold in static electricity all the time. We just do it in big giant chambers. What if I just told you you didn't need that? You just needed the understanding of it, and then you can use the energy itself to do it. Well, that's the concept of the field bubble, right? But why does it raise the frequency? Well, think about it. If I'm using a form of magnetism, okay, to hold this thing in, then I'm creating a amount of energy on the inside, but I'm not turning off the spigot. I'm allowing it to flow. So what happens? Well, as the energy in here flows over time into here, it keeps building. Well, anytime that you build frequency and energy together, okay, they start shooting up. What does that mean? It means the amount of frequency goes higher. The more that you put in there of energy in the static form, the more the frequency goes up. Because you're not combining it with the magnetism there. You're using them as separate instruments, okay? The magnetism's on the outside. It creates a plasma layer, right, that separates the two. On the inside, it's still staying in that static field. Now it's pushing the amount of static up, which means the frequency itself should go up. On average, 25 megahertz is what I'm getting. But over time, it starts to creep up more and more and more and more and more, right? Because it's based on the amount of volume of energy that I put inside that bubble. It also means it strengthens the fields on the outside because it's not passing that field. That's why you build it over time. You see, you didn't turn the Tesla coil off either. You never turned off the spigot on that one either. So what happens? As this one forms, and they build together and they form that plasma layer, right? It's important to understand it in that way. So you go, oh man, I can just go over here and I can put a ton of static in it right away, right? Or I can put a ton of magnetism in it right away. Well, no, because you ruin the effect. They have to build together over time. If you put a bunch of static in it, what happens? It bypasses that magnetic layer. It goes right past the plasma, shoots right on out, and it blows up everything in your room, okay? Everything gets hit with static really super fast. Why? Because on the end of that field there and that magnetism, it basically takes static and it holds it in, right? Like a pressure. Well, when it gets outside of it, what does it do? It throws it across the room because of the pressure there. It's throwing it. So now that we understand that, we know, hey, you can't just come over here and put this static generator in here and build tons of static right away. I need to build the fields together in tandem. Once you understand that, you understand why Alexei takes his time to build it. He doesn't do it with a lot of high power stuff. When I tell you that he doesn't put hardly anything into his high voltage, it's very simple why. If you have your high voltage competing with your Tesla coil, the effects don't work out right at all. You have to have your high voltage way below your Tesla coil in order for it to get in resonance with it so that it can leach over and take the frequency from it. You must have a dominant part to it. The Tesla coil is a dominant part. It also makes sense into understanding this. It's your longitudinal wave. It's what's going to create your anti-gravity. Knowing that, right? We get back to the piezo. What is the piezo actually doing? You see, this is where people have a lot of trouble with this. You're constantly putting pressure on a plate, on the center plate, and nowhere else, okay? This is a conversation between that piezo buzzer and that center plate. And I know that for a fact because when you put the camera on it and you have the piezo on and you push the button, which turns the piezo off, your center plate does this. It flips up. It makes a very distinct sound. It goes dink, dink. The sound of metal being hit, dink, every time. So what is that telling you? It's telling you that it's moving that metal. When you see it visually, you can see it moving the metal. It's not much, but is it going to take much to do what he needs it to do? You see, all he's doing is taking the negative that he builds on the bottom. Now just understand this. You have rotating magnets, but they have a shell on them. That shell means they only go in one direction. They go up. North, south, one direction, okay? Forget all about that other stuff. It just goes one direction. It's putting eddy current into the center disc. It's making the bottom always negative, never going positive. Well, when you put the static or you put the high voltage on the top, what is it doing? It's making that always positive on the top. How do you get the center plate to take that negative and bring it to the top part? You have to move the plate, right? It's as simple as that. You're dipping it in, it goes into the field and it's bringing it up. It makes the whole thing for a very small second, it makes it negative. Why is that important? If the only thing positive is the disc on the top and the whole craft is now negative, this is an understanding in static electricity. And also in lifters, if you do them the right way, all the negative is now pushing up to the positive. It's chasing it. It's like a dog in its tail. It's continuing to chase it and it can't catch it. How do you balance it back out? All the positive on the top, all the negative on the bottom. The reason that eddy current is there is so that the bottom never goes positive. The magnets are reinforcing it. Now, why would Alexei put magnets on the top? Well, he wanted to induce the flip so that it always goes up in one direction. It's a misunderstanding of how the electricity works, right? What you're going to do in that instance is you're going to go like this, and then you're going to cause cogging on and off as they counter rotate. Okay, you get what I'm saying? They pulse. Every time the magnet comes right over top of each other, they pulse. It ruins any effect that you would have in this instance. So we must understand it on the level it needs to be created at. What does it do when you flip that thing as well? Well, see, you have two plates. Now you flip the field. Now it's like forcing them apart, right? Anytime that you force them apart, you create a vacuum in the center and you pull more energy in. This is the moment where the Graviflyer itself has enough energy to lift. This is very important in the understanding of this. You take a 9-volt battery, you have two plates, you put them together, you pull them apart rapidly, you get 1,000 volts out of it, out of a 9-volt battery. Understand this. The multiplication on that is huge. Therefore, if you take this disc right here and this disc right here and you suddenly pull them apart, you get a massive amount of energy that's sucked into it from the environment. You're creating an environment full of static. You have a ton of energy to use. Whew. Pull it in. Blast them apart. Okay? The positive on the top, all the entire mass of the negative now goes up to the positive. How do you know that process is going on? There's a simple test for it. All you have to do is you take a napkin and you fold it several times. Take a disc of copper, a bigger one and a smaller one. Put it on each side, and all you're going to do is put electricity through it. So basically go get your taser module, and all you want to do is put it over a scale and tap the button. Turn it on. Boom. 9 times out of 10, the small one goes towards the big one, right? That's what we see all the time. There's that 1 time out of 10 where the big one goes towards the small one. What's the difference? In the 9 times, you have everything in one direction and all the negative is on the bottom, right? On the 1 time, the negative is now on the top of that bigger plate. Now it's chasing that little one. Now you've just reversed it. That's the reverse flip you're looking for. You're looking for that to happen so that it can now chase it. That's your lift. So when it comes to the piezo, is there another way that we can activate it? Well, you say, can we take solenoids and put them on top and pop the solenoids and create that effect where we take the disc right here and pop it, right? And we bring it up rapidly. Can we create it and get a lift out of it? Well, it might be possible. Could we just basically run some kind of wire or something along the top of that plate, right? And then hit it as well and get the top and the bottom to both be negative at the same time and create that pressure. Well, that can be done as well. It's the same thing that the piezo is doing itself when it just moves the plate a little bit. But it's that understanding of what it's actually doing in the process. Let me tell you another misunderstanding about something that you need to know about this device. Everybody talks about rotating magnetic fields. And trust me, I put out a video a long time ago on my channel about it. I basically rotated a magnet at 7,800 RPM. And I can tell you the distance of where the field breaks off. When you want to stop the field from producing a field that goes out in every direction, you shell it. What does that mean? That you basically take a piece of iron and you put it right around it, iron or steel, put it around the magnet and it shells it. It stops the amount of energy from pushing out. Now that goes against conventional thinking of how things work. You would think, man, it would get magnetized and make it stronger. But it doesn't. It cancels it out. It means those magnets on the bottom only go in one direction. They're there to strengthen that eddy current in that center plate. That's it. That's what those are doing. So where does your magnetic field come from? You have to understand what's in a DC flyback. When you look at a DC flyback, this is where people get misunderstandings. They hear diode, diode, diode. There's not a diode in the thing. Not one. What is it actually? We take this ferrite core that goes like this, and right on one side, you're going to get a very slim piece of plastic, and then you're going to get wire wrapped around it. We all know that that is basically creating a magnetic field. That's pretty simple, but that's your negative. So your negative wire that goes into it is your magnetic field. That's where the magnetic field comes from. What's the rest of the flyback? Well, it's layers. It's plastic layers that has this little tiny strip of metal on it, okay? And it goes out and builds several one. As it does that, it builds a diode. So what does that mean? It means that the strips of the metal that are on those plastics cannot create a big enough field to create magnetism in that area that pushes back the other way. Therefore, it builds out in electricity so that we see the voltage rise on that side, but the magnetism drop. That's how that DC flyback works. On the top, you're getting more of a static field, right? Because you're getting low levels in the air, not touching the plate, and it's allowing static to get up there, and it goes on the plate, and it flings out from the plate. Anybody that thinks that it sticks in the plate needs to really redo the experiment. It flings out from the plate everywhere. And on the bottom, it's magnetism. Magnetism is not known to spread out everywhere. Not like that. What it's basically doing is magnetizing that bottom plate, reinforcing those magnets themselves, but because it's connected to the Tesla coil. The Tesla coil acts like it's a neutral field. Because you put it down the center of the Tesla coil and not connected to the number 2 of the Tesla coil, it acts as basically a neutral field. By combining it with your high voltage supply, you're giving it the ability to take on the mannerisms of the magnetism. Now you have a field bubble that forms. You have it inside, you have it outside. That's how you would describe this craft. They talk about a nuclear moment. Yeah, it's there. If you took the center of your Tesla coil, and this is why I took several months to investigate this and build them out and find out exactly what they're doing, because it's causing radiation. See, nobody wants to hear that, but that's exactly what it's doing. It's causing the radiation that goes on. So is there a nuclear moment? Well, if you think of radiation like you're thinking of the demon core, perfectly fine in a radiant form, okay, which just means the energy's out there. But then you compress it, and then it becomes radiation and builds out like that. Well, now you understand what's going on here. Do you get a nuclear moment? Maybe. Yeah. You're definitely getting radiation, that's for sure. And radiation builds out thicker than it does static. You know, there's a lot of moving parts to this, but every single one of them has a basis in physics. Putting the two plates together and moving them apart, physics. Okay? Magnetism, physics. Okay? Static, physics. We look at how they work together in tandem and create the plasma layer. It's all there. It's how do you balance this thing? Well, the problem I was having before is I couldn't balance my frequencies. They wouldn't stay steady. I couldn't get the repeating pattern. This is what people don't understand. Why would I ever want to put a magnetron in the center of a Graviflyer? It's because it's the microwave frequency. It's the repeating pattern over again and again and again and again and again. Frequency equals 1 over time. It continuously puts out the same frequency over and over and over again. But now, we're making that device in a less sophisticated manner by putting the frequency in there over time. Again, we have 2 separate areas where we're getting resonance. So we have the frequency over time in both sides, but we also get the beat frequency. This is very important when it comes to this kind of physics. Is the craft something that everybody wants to work on? No. It's not. It really isn't. You're probably a pariah if you work on it. Here's the thing. There is so much physics based on this whole thing and how it works. To not look into it is an absolute disgrace. If you just said, I looked at it and you're done with it, it's disgraceful. The answer's there. It's right there. You will not find a UFO project that doesn't have every one of the physics formulas you're going to find in this project right here. That's the problem. Nobody wants to look that far. They don't want to investigate the Tesla coil. They don't want to break apart a DC flyback and see how it actually works. They don't want to understand the shell around the magnets. They don't want to understand, you know, how to build that bubble. That bubble is gold, man. That is the greatest understanding out there. You want to talk about how Sal Paez finds it? There you go. That's exactly what he's talking about when he's doing this. Man, the repeating pattern, frequency and the repeating pattern. Why does that screw things up? You know, I always give the example of horses on a bridge, but you could just take people on a bridge. Why? Because you have a left foot and a right foot. Everybody stomps on the right at the same time. Everybody stomps on the left at the same time. You get a pattern in frequency, right? It's simple. Once you match the resonance frequency of the bridge, it starts to distort, right? But it has to do it with 2 resonance frequencies and a pulse. That's the understanding here. You have to have 2 resonant frequencies. That means you must create one set and a second set and have a pulse in between them. That pulse is an amplifier. It's your resident frequency. The maximum amount of a value in a frequency that you can possibly get. Resident frequency. That's how it ties in. It distorts nature. When it's distorting nature, what do we know the field to be? This should be commonplace, and it's not.
The old man will. The old man will. The old man will. The old man builds. The old man builds is broken in the head. People not seeing reality has put them in the red. Where conscious and spirituality been stricken from the norm and replaced with the ignorance of basic magnetic form. The geometry of God keeps running through his head. That's what makes old man builds broken in the head. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Fears of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds.